Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, a gentle, sleep-friendly adaptation. Stave 2, the first of the three spirits. When Scrooge awoke, the darkness felt unusually deep, so deep that the windows seemed to dissolve into the walls, as if the whole room had been wrapped in a heavy velvet night. He lay still for a moment, listening. Far away, a church bell began to mark the quarters. Soft, hollow, steady, he waited for the hour. And then came another sound, and another. The bell did not stop. 6, then 7, then 8, on and on, calmly climbing, as if time itself had forgotten the rules until it reached 12 and fell silent. 12. Scrooge frowned into the dark. He had gone to bed long after midnight. He was certain of it. He reached for his small repeater clock and pressed the spring. Its quick pulse answered 12, then stopped. A cold thought slipped into his mind like a draught under a door. What if it is noon? What if the sun has moved strangely, and this is 12 in the middle of the day? The idea unsettled him. He scrambled out of bed, bare feet finding the chill of the floor, and made his way toward the window. The air tasted faintly of frost and old stone. His dressing gown brushed against his legs. Soft fabric, but not nearly warm enough. He rubbed the glass with his sleeve to clear away the frost. Outside, the world was not bright. It was still foggy, thick, muffling, as if the city had been covered by a pale wool blanket. The cold looked sharp and quiet. There were no footsteps, no carts, no voices rushing through the streets. Only stillness. And that stillness, strangely, brought him a small relief, because if the day had truly turned into noon, the city would have been alive with movement. But it was not. It was like a midnight that refused to leave. Scrooge returned to bed. He thought and thought, and the more he tried to solve the mystery, the more the mystery tightened around him. And when he tried not to think, his thoughts only returned again and again, like a spring snapping back into place. Marley's ghost lingered in the edges of his mind. Each time he attempted to tell himself it had been nothing but a dream, the memory rose again, calm and stubborn. Was it a dream or not? He lay there until the bell rang again. And then he remembered the warning. A spirit will come when the bell strikes one. Scrooge decided to stay awake. He could not fall asleep even if he tried. His mind would not let him. So he listened. The quarter hours felt endless. At last, ding dong. 1:15, he counted. Ding dong, 1:30. Ding dong, 1:45. Ding dong. And then, finally, the hour bell sounded. 1. The sound was deep and heavy, like a slow wave rolling through stone. At the same instant, a pale light filled the room. Not bright, not cheerful, just present. And then the curtains of his bed moved. They were drawn aside, not by wind, not by chance, by a hand. Scrooge sat up, half rising, his breath caught in his throat, and found himself face to face with an unearthly visitor, close enough to feel the quiet of it. The figure was strange, not frightening, but impossible to place. It was like a child, and yet not a child. Like an old man, and yet not old. Its hair fell white over its shoulders, soft as snow. Its face held the tender bloom of youth, untouched by wrinkles. Its arms were long and strong, its hands steady, gentle but powerful, as if they could hold something fragile without breaking it. It wore a simple white tunic, clean and calm, and around its waist was a shining belt that glimmered softly. In its hand it held a small branch of green holly, fresh and alive, and yet its clothing carried a hint of summer flowers, as if seasons had been stitched together in quiet contradiction. But the most remarkable thing was the light. From the top of its head rose a clear, steady beam, a gentle jet of brightness that made everything visible in the room without harshness. Under its arm, it held a large cap, like an extinguisher, as if, at times, it needed to dim its own light. The figure seemed to flicker in subtle ways, not like a flame, but like something seen through mist. Distinct one moment, softened the next, as if it belonged partly to this world and partly to somewhere else. Scrooge stared, his heart beating steadily now, not in panic, but in stunned attention. "Are you this spirit whose coming was foretold to me?" he asked. "I am." The voice was gentle, low, as though it came from a distance, even while the spirit stood close. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded, his voice still sharp from habit. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" Scrooge asked, glancing at its small stature. "No," the spirit replied. "Your past." Scrooge felt something shift inside his chest, a strange ache, quiet and unfamiliar, like an old door creaking open. He looked at the spirit's cap, and without knowing why, wished it would cover the light as though the brightness made his thoughts too visible. But the spirit's tone grew firmer, not angry, but certain. "Would you so soon put out the light? I give." Scrooge, unsettled, tried to explain himself awkwardly. He had not meant to offend. The spirit listened, then spoke softly. "I have come for your welfare." Scrooge muttered that he was grateful, though he could not help thinking that a night of uninterrupted sleep would have been far better for him. The spirit seemed to hear the thought before it was spoken. "Your reclamation, then," it said. "Take heed." And it reached out, not roughly, not forcefully, but with a calm certainty, and clasped Scrooge by the arm. "Rise," it said, "and walk with me." Scrooge tried to protest. The air was cold. The hour was wrong for walking. His bed was warm, his slippers thin, his dressing gown too light, his body not made for midnight journeys. But the spirit's grip, though gentle, was not to be resisted. Scrooge rose. The spirit moved toward the window, and as it did, the wall no longer felt like a wall. They passed through it, like mist through mist, and suddenly Scrooge stood upon an open country road. The city was gone. The fog was gone. The darkness had vanished as if it had never existed. The day was clear, cold, and bright with snow upon the ground that glittered quietly, not like celebration, but like truth. Scrooge looked around, breathing in air that smelled of winter and distance, and something inside him trembled. "Good heaven," he whispered. "I was bred in this place. I was a boy here." The spirit gazed at him kindly, and Scrooge, without understanding how it happened, felt 1,000 forgotten things rise in him. Not loudly, not violently, but softly, like old scents drifting through a half-open door, each one connected to a memory, each one carrying hopes and joys and long-hidden sorrow. He blinked, and his eyes grew wet. "Your lip is trembling," said the spirit. "And what is that upon your cheek?" Scrooge turned his face aside, embarrassed by tenderness. He muttered that it was nothing, and asked the spirit in a quieter voice than before, "Lead me where you will." "You remember the way?" asked the spirit. "Remember it?" Scrooge whispered, with something like wonder. "I could walk it blindfold." And together They began to move forward into the past that was waiting, quiet as falling snow. They walked further along the road, and Scrooge recognized everything. Every gate, every tree, every turn, as if his memory were quietly awakening with each step. Soon in the distance, a small town appeared, with a bridge, with a church, with a winding river slowly sliding between its banks. Boys ran toward them, on ponies, in carts, with faces flushed from the cold. They laughed, called to one another, wished each other a Merry Christmas, and the air filled with the living, clear sound of joy. "These are only shadows of what once was," said the Spirit softly. "They cannot see us." But Scrooge saw them, and his heart trembled. He knew each of them, remembered their names, remembered their voices, and as they passed by, wishing one another happy holidays, Scrooge's eyes filled with light, so unexpected that he himself was surprised. "What then is Christmas to me?" he whispered, and in that moment the answer hurt. The Spirit led him further along a narrow path, to an old red brick building, a school. It was large but cold, with windows that looked on indifferently, with a yard where the snow lay unevenly, as if forgotten. "The school is not entirely empty," said the Spirit. "One boy has remained here." Scrooge nodded. He knew. They entered a long, pale room, wooden desks, weak light, and the boy alone reading beside a feeble fire. Scrooge lowered himself beside him. He saw himself, small, forgotten, quiet. Tears flowed without effort. He wept not from pain, but from tenderness toward who he once had been. The Spirit touched his shoulder, and the scene changed. A man appeared in strange clothing, as if from a fairy tale. And Scrooge suddenly laughed through his tears, recognizing the characters who had once been his only joy. "Poor boy," he whispered. "Poor me." "What is this?" asked the Spirit. "Yesterday a boy was singing a carol at my door," said Scrooge softly. "I wish I had given him something." The Spirit smiled. "Let us see another Christmas." The scene dimmed. The boy grew older. He sat in a room again alone, and suddenly the door burst open. A little girl ran in. "Brother," she cried joyfully, "I've come to take you home." Fan, his sister. She laughed, embraced him, pulled him toward the light. "Home forever," she said. Father has grown kinder. At home it is warm. At home it is like heaven. Scrooge watched, and his heart tightened and brightened at the same time. She was delicate, said the spirit, but she had a great heart. Yes, whispered Scrooge, she was. And time moved on again. The city, shops, evening, Christmas. They entered a warehouse. "Fezziwig!" cried Scrooge. "Why, it's old Fezziwig!" And the room filled with laughter, with dancing, with music, with light. Fezziwig laughed, clapped his hands, invited everyone to celebrate. And Scrooge, now young, danced. He spent little, said the spirit, but he gave people happiness. It is not about money, Scrooge replied passionately. He made life lighter. And the scene changed again. Now a young woman sat beside Scrooge. Her eyes were gentle and sad. "Another idol has taken my place," she said. "A golden one." Scrooge was silent. "You have changed," she said quietly. "I release you." She left. And Scrooge felt something finally break inside him. "Show me no more," he cried. But the spirit led him further. A family, children, laughter, warmth. And Scrooge understood this could have been his life. "Take me away," he begged. The spirit's light grew brighter. Scrooge seized the spirit's cap and pressed it down over his head. Light poured through it still. Scrooge felt exhaustion, sleep, darkness. He fell onto the bed. The candle burned down, and he slept like a man afraid to wake.